October 1347. In the port of Messina, Sicily, 12 Genoese galleys are docking. Sailors returning from Crimea can barely stand on their feet. Port workers notice something strange. Corpses lie on the decks, and the living are covered with monstrous black swellings, buboes the size of apples. City authorities order the immediate expulsion of these ships of death, but it's already too late. An invisible enemy has come ashore. Let's try to reconstruct this moment using artificial intelligence technologies to see what Messina looked like on the eve of the greatest catastrophe in human history. Narrow streets, stone houses with tiled roofs, markets full of life. The city doesn't know that in a few weeks its population will be cut in half. The disease that contemporaries would call the Black Death traveled along the Great Silk Road. It began somewhere in the steppes of Central Asia, possibly in China or Mongolia. Trade caravans carried not only silks and spices, they carried the bacterium Yersinia pestis, living in the blood of fleas parasitizing rats. These rats traveled in ship holds, in bales of goods, in merchant caravans. In 1346, the plague reached the city of Kaffa, a Genoese colony in Crimea. The Mongol army besieging the fortress suddenly began to die. The Khan ordered the catapulting of infected corpses over the walls, possibly the first use of biological warfare in history. The Genoese fled by sea, not realizing they were carrying death with them. By December 1347, the plague had engulfed the entire southern coast of Italy. From Messina, it jumped to Genoa, Venice, Pisa. The trade connections that had made Italy the wealthiest region of Europe turned into arteries through which death flowed. Every ship, every merchant, every cart became a carrier. By early 1348, the disease reached Florence. Florence in those years was one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Aristocratic towers, the dome of Santa Maria del Fiore under construction, artists' workshops, banking houses. Population, about 100,000 people. Dense development, narrow streets, no sewage system. Perfect conditions for an epidemic. Many people died in the streets day and night, and of many others who died at home, neighbors learned only from the smell of decomposing bodies. The dead were stacked in huge mass graves, fosses communes, in layers like lasagna, sprinkled with quicklime. How exactly did the plague kill? Modern science has reconstructed the mechanism. A flea that has bitten an infected rat becomes a living incubator. Bacteria multiply in its stomach, forming a blockage. The flea cannot digest blood, and with each bite regurgitates thousands of bacteria directly into the victim's bloodstream. When rats die out, hungry fleas switch to humans. The first symptoms appear 2 to 6 days after the bite. Sudden fever, chills, headache. Then, the main sign that gave name to the bubonic form. Lymph nodes in the groin, armpits, or neck swell into painful tumors the size of an orange. The skin over them darkens, becomes black or purple due to subcutaneous hemorrhages, hence the name, Black Death. Medieval doctors did not understand the nature of the disease. They followed the theory of miasmas, bad air that poisons the organism. Treatment was meaningless and often cruel. Buboes were opened with red-hot iron. Live frogs or pigeons were applied to them. It was believed they would draw out the poison. They gave mercury to drink, crushed emerald, vinegar with ground viper. A sinister figure appeared, the plague doctor. Let's try to reconstruct his costume. A long waxed cloak, a wide-brimmed hat, and a mask with a beak stuffed with aromatic herbs, camphor and vinegar sponge. Protection from miasmas. In his hands, a wooden cane to avoid touching patients. These doctors went from house to house counting the dead, but could save almost no one. Without antibiotics, bubonic plague killed 60% of those infected. But there were two other forms, even more deadly. Septicemic plague, when the bacterium enters directly into the blood, the skin becomes covered with gangrenous spots, fingers and nose turn black and die within hours. Mortality, 90%. And the most terrible, pneumonic form. Airborne transmission from person to person, bloody cough, high fever, death within 24 hours. Survivors, units. Chronicles of that time describe cases when people went to bed healthy and died before dawn. Families locked themselves in houses, hoping to wait it out. But if at least one family member became infected, all died. Red crosses were drawn on the doors of infected houses with the inscription, "Lord, have mercy on us." By summer 1348, the plague had engulfed all of Western Europe. It spared no one. The rich died in their palazzos, the poor in slums. The King of Castile lost his daughter, the King of Aragon, his wife. The Archbishop of Canterbury died, and his successor lived only 4 months after appointment. Death ignored titles. Let's try to see Paris in summer 1348. The largest city in Northern Europe, with a population of 200,000 people, Notre Dame Cathedral already stands on the Île de la Cité. The left bank of the Seine is built up with university buildings. The right bank, merchant quarters, craft guilds. Every day, 800 people are buried in the city. Cemeteries are overflowing. At the Cemetery of the Holy Innocents, Paris's main burial ground, huge trenches were dug. Thousands of bodies, without coffins, without funeral rites. The economy was collapsing. Fields were not sown. There was no one to work. Workshops closed. Craftsmen had died. Entire villages became depopulated. In England, remains of 1,500 such ghost settlements have been found, abandoned during the epidemic and never resettled. Modern archaeologists find their traces, house foundations, overgrown churchyards, mass graves. Merchants feared traveling from city to city. Chaos reigned on the roads. Gangs of looters robbed abandoned houses, attacked travelers. City authorities hired special people, becchini, gravediggers, who for huge sums of money collected corpses from the streets. These people became outcasts. They were feared, despised. But without them, cities would have suffocated in stinking mountains of dead bodies. Strange social phenomena emerged. The movement of flagellants, fanatics who walked from city to city, publicly whipping themselves with leather whips with metal spikes. They believed that the plague was God's punishment for sins, and redemption was possible only through pain. Processions of hundreds of people, bloodied backs, singing psalms. The church initially tolerated them, then banned them. The flagellants became uncontrollable. Pogroms began. A culprit was needed, and it became the Jews. Rumors spread across Europe. Jews poisoned the wells, spreading disease. In Strasbourg, Mainz, Cologne, Jewish quarters were burned to the ground, along with their inhabitants. Thousands perished. Pope Clement VI issued a bull stating that Jews were dying from the plague, just like Christians, and the accusations were insane. But this stopped few. Fear bred hatred. Medieval medicine was powerless, but people tried to save themselves by any means. The wealthy fled from cities to country estates. This is exactly what Boccaccio's Decameron heroes did, secluding themselves in a villa and telling each other stories while the epidemic raged around them. But there was no salvation even there. Rats and fleas traveled with people. Pope Clement VI locked himself in the palace, surrounded by bodyguards. His personal physician, Guy de Chauliac, proposed an extreme method of protection. The pontiff sat for months between two huge bonfires that burned day and night. It was believed that fire purifies the air of miasmas. Clement survived, perhaps simply due to luck and isolation, though he himself attributed his salvation to the fires. Cities tried to introduce quarantines. Venice was the first to introduce a rule. Ships arriving from infected ports had to stand at anchor for 40 days, 40 giorni, before the crew was allowed to come ashore. From this came the word quarantine. But the measures were too late. Fleas had already penetrated the mainland. People wore amulets, pouches with herbs, precious stones, prayers written on parchment. Doctors recommended avoiding baths. It was believed that hot water opens pores through which infectious air penetrates. They advised not to look at the sick. Supposedly a glance could transmit the disease. They suggested drinking vinegar, wearing flowers near the nose, fumigating houses with sulfur and aromatic resins. In some cities, authorities tried to organize sanitary measures. They ordered removal of garbage from streets, forbade keeping pigs in houses, arranged public bonfires on which clothes of the deceased were burned. But no one thought to destroy rats. Their role as carriers would only be discovered 500 years later. Priests served masses for the dying, heard confessions, gave communion, and died themselves, one after another. The clergy suffered enormous losses, perhaps up to 40%. After the epidemic, the church faced a shortage of educated clerics and was forced to urgently ordain poorly educated candidates, which would later undermine its authority. By 1353, the epidemic began to recede. It swept through Europe in waves, returning to some regions 2 or 3 times. A final death toll is impossible, but most historians agree on the figure. 30 to 60% of Europe's population perished. Of 75 million, about 50 remained. Some regions, Italy, southern France, England, lost more than half their inhabitants. Let's try to reconstruct London in 1355, 2 years after the end of the epidemic. A city that once numbered 70,000 inhabitants is now a ghost city with a population of 40,000. Entire quarters stand empty. Overgrown gardens, boarded up houses, crumbling churches. But gradually, life returns. Markets trade again, workshops open, bells ring. The plague changed everything. Europe's economy restructured. There was a catastrophic shortage of labor, and surviving peasants suddenly became a valuable resource. Feudal lords were forced to raise wages, improve working conditions, abolish corvée. Serfs began to demand freedom. A few decades later, peasant uprisings would sweep through Europe. The Jacquerie in France, Wat Tyler's rebellion in England. The plague destroyed the old feudal order. The cultural landscape also changed. Before the plague, medieval philosophy dominated, focused on the afterlife. After, people began to value earthly existence, enjoying life here and now. Some historians believe that the Renaissance was a direct consequence of the Black Death. Art became more realistic. The first anatomical studies appeared. Painting filled with images of death, danse macabre, dances of death, where skeletons dance with kings and shepherds, reminding, before death, all are equal. Medicine began to slowly change. Understanding that old methods didn't work pushed doctors to seek new approaches. Universities began studying anatomy through dissections, a practice the church had previously forbidden. The first medical treatises appeared, based on observations rather than the authority of ancient texts. The plague would return many more times. A second wave in the 1360s, a third in the 1370s. outbreaks would periodically shake Europe until the 18th century. The Great Plague of London in 1665 would kill 100,000 people. Only the development of hygiene, sewage systems, rat control would gradually weaken the disease's grip. And the final explanation of plague's nature would be given in 1894 by Alexandra Yersin, who discovered the bacterium Yersinia pestis. But the Black Death of 1347 to 1353 remains the largest pandemic in human history by percentage of deaths. It killed more people than any war. It wiped entire cities and villages off the face of the earth. But it also, paradoxically, pushed Europe toward modernization, destroying ossified feudal structures and opening the path to a new world. We can reconstruct the appearance of that era with artificial intelligence. But we will never reconstruct the horror of those who lived in a world where every day could be the last. The Black Death was not just a disease. It was the end of one world and the beginning of another.